to my channel, Moving with Meaning. Today, in this video, I'm going to share a few revelations I had from my first book publishing and the process that I went through with that. And why? Well, I guess because sharing is caring. So, see you soon. So let's go ahead and get to it, and I'm going to try to run by these really quick. So don't want to lose your interest, but I definitely want to give you a good sense of what I went through, and then kind of how I'm going to go about things a little bit carefully, and how I learned from those. And hopefully that'll help me be a little bit more organized and have a sense of expectation for when I go through these various phases. So first one we're going to hit up here is editing. All right. So first of all, the best investment that you can do is to hire professional book editors. And that's for developmental editing, copy editing, and proofreading. And basically in that order, okay? I used Book Editing Associates, and I'll put the link below for finding my experts. I basically just entered in the genre, and then they provided a list of editors which you basically was able to read through their profile, and you can decide which one would best fit what you were looking for and how they went about their editing process. They also provide maybe some information as far as blogs and things like that that you can check out as well. If you're on the fence about a couple people, you can go further into detail because they do have their own websites. So that was great. And you just select the one that you want, and the rest is between the two of you. So what I didn't expect in development editing, okay? So one thing is the time frame. So with epic fantasy, or fantasy in general, 9 times out of 10, these books are long. So I think they tend to go between 300 and 500 pages, I guess. And with my books, because I chose to do quite a bit of character development and focus a lot on spiritual, so the inner thoughts of folks, that really took my book and added additional content. So I guess with my book being over 400 pages, it was going to take months to get this whole developmental editing done. And when I say months, I mean I'm talking about like almost a year before we were done editing this. So just factor that in, right? Is that however long your book is, how many words, however way that they charge for their services, factor in that takes a certain amount of time for them to do this, because developmental editing is very deep, very in-depth. You cycle through over and over again. So I enjoyed it because it set a really good foundation. I think it took my book to a whole nother level, because what happens is you're writing what you're thinking. And a lot of times you don't, so it's really good to get that person who has this experience come in and say, yeah, what did you mean here? And I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to even explain that whole part. So that was very helpful. Another thing that I didn't expect in developmental editing, and it may be that this was the particular editor that I had selected, but the opinion of the editor. So sometimes the feedback that I would get, it was almost like my editor was trying to change my story, or the concept of what it was, or the character of where they came from, and so on and so forth. And so instead of her making a note to add clarity, she would suggest changes to like the plot and, like I said, the characters. And so I felt I spent some unnecessary time really defending my story and my concept, and really kind of pushing back on her and saying, like really asking her, like, clarify what you're missing. I had to really do that because I wanted to make sure that I stayed true to my story, my concept. Like at one point, I thought my book was like a complete failure. I mean, I almost wanted to throw it in the trash the way that she was going about it, all right? And from what I hear, this is a common gripe, okay, that these editors will basically kind of give you something to nudge you in a certain direction. And the only advice that I can give you guys on this is to go through the process, first of all, because what she really did, like I said, really helped structure my story very well. This book wouldn't have been anything more than what it could have been without the assistance that she had provided. But also fight for your book's concept, okay? Because it is your book, and they're editing the book that you want it to be, not the reverse. They are really honestly just doing their job, and so they tend to. They're supposed to be objective, but they tend to, because they're so passionate about it, and they may be enjoying the story so much that they start to kind of try to become a part of that process. So even in the end, she complimented me on the finished project, in which case I was incredibly shocked. Now, the design part of this, okay, same here. Hire professional book covers, illustrators, and interior artists. This one right here, you really want to create a budget, because I had to pay a pretty penny for my book cover, which seems to be well worth it, because I cannot get enough folks gushing over the title. Now, this was very much a chicken and egg situation, and I'll explain that. So my book cover artist could design my book cover, the ebook version, the digital version, without any dependencies. But my interior designer needed my book cover completed so that he can add that picture, that particular image, as part of his, an insert into how he did his design. So I'm kind of like, I booked them kind of both together happening at the same time. So there was like, okay, I'm waiting on this one to finish, I'm waiting on this to happen, and I'm not done with the book cover because we were going through different revisions of it to get it to where we needed it to be. Meanwhile, the interior designer could work on all of the interior work. And if you get my book, take note of this, because this was phenomenal. Like, this was the best. I haven't seen a book. I read a lot of fantasy books, and I've not seen a fantasy book that was so intricately designed, carefully designed, but not distracting. It was just perfect, very perfect, all the way to the typography. Now, for my book cover designer to also do the paperback and the hardcover, they needed certain specs for them to cover, because the book cover has to go from front to back and has to flow. So he needed the length of the book, but he also needed the amount of pages, because that's how thick the book is. And so he had to account for the binding part of it. I had to, again, wait for my internal designer to finish all of that work. Now, here's a great segue into what additional information that I didn't even think about that you might want to consider when you're editing your manuscript. But my interior designer was like, okay, so we need the copyright paragraph, we need the dedication, the book pitch, about the author, a glossary, all of these things. And I was like, whoa. So I had to like really quickly hurry up and tap into that, type those up, and provide that stuff for him. Obviously, I knew that this is what was provided in books. It just left my mind because all I was focusing on was the story. I wasn't focusing on all of the embellishments and accentuations that happens with typical books, right? So just keep that in mind. So make sure to have those things ready, preferably before you start your interior design. You don't necessarily need it for editing. Well, you know what? The glossary you probably should have going into the editing, because 9 times out of 10 your editor will ask for that. But other than that, yeah, while things are being edited, kind of start crafting those other pieces. Also, these guys, the editors and the designers, they are busy, okay? So sometimes you need to factor in like a delay because they are putting you in a queue. I mean, they have a list of people that they're going through, either doing the design work or doing these edits. So they have to kind of put you in a list, I guess, if you will, of who's to come in next. For example, I had to wait 3 months from the day that I booked and purchased my book cover designer before he actually was able to finish all of his other projects to start on mine. So it was a whole 3 months, which worked out fine because I was so in my editing phase. So I jumped on that as soon as I possibly could. So just keep in mind that you will need to consider that there will be a delay in a way. And the last one I'm going to quickly go over, which is promotion. Okay, so I started promoting late. I didn't know that I was late until I was late, okay? Until I was like, oh my God, the release date is like in 6 weeks. I need to get this book out to my ARC readers, and my interior design hasn't been done yet. Like, whoa, you know? So 6 weeks before the book release is obviously not enough time. I found myself rushing to create author profiles on like Goodreads, Book Sirens, and even Amazon. I had to go around finding ARC readers, and that was really just in my personal network. Now, I didn't really like broadcast that too much, but I had to find the list. And then the next thing I was going to do was reach out to podcasts so that to promote my books on their podcast to reach another audience. And I have yet to still do that. So that's still something that I'm actually going to keep carrying on and doing while I'm writing my second book, because I didn't get a chance to do it. I just ran out of time. I ran out of, 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, it just wasn't enough. I also had to create a lot of social media content, and honestly, I still feel like I missed some opportunities. So I would suggest to start promoting once your book editing is done. Like once that editing is done, start creating this content, start reaching out to podcasts, start reaching out to ARC readers, and start like gathering these individuals and start generating a reputation and a presence so that it will draw people in to hopefully start, reading your book. I know this was my first one. I think after my second one, I think I'll have plenty more people that'll jump in and be like, okay, yeah, I want a free copy because I can't wait for this next one to be released. I need to know what happened now. So that's a plus side. At the end of the day, overall, it was an enjoyable experience. And I am very happy to have learned this stuff, but also for the next time around, as well as to share these with you, okay? Because I'm an oversharer. My book and my genre, where I'm going is my own path, and it's going to be what it is. And there's no need to hoard information, and a lot of things that I did learn, I learned from other folks who were sharing their writing experiences and their lessons learned as well. So with these lessons, I'll be able to basically add more the next time around, so that I'm less stressed and I feel much more complete at the end of the day. So those are my lessons, or my revelations, if you will, from my first book. I hope you enjoy. Please drop a comment if there's anything else that you think that I may have missed that I could kind of contribute from, or if you want to learn or want to know a little bit more about just how I went about just the editing process, just the editing and writing, and how that whole thing turned out, because that took a whole life of its own, and I've learned from that as well. So until next time, keep moving.